to today's video, and today, just like my last video, I'm going to be talking about the domestication of pets, and we're going to be talking about 4 pets that you may own or may have owned. So the animals we're going to be talking about today are the dog, the cat, the goldfish, and the Syrian hamster. So let's jump right into it, man. That's not natural to say for me. So, starting with the dog. 30,000 years ago, it starts. So, the wild wolves were attracted to the humans' camps due to the smell of cooking meat. Of course, back then humans ate a lot more meat, so of course so did wolves. So the wolves were attracted by the scent. So the wolves, I skipped a part. So the friendly wolves hung around with the people for a while, and the people would feed the wolves that were friendly, and the wolves would protect them in return, kind of like a symbiosis. And then, so by just breeding friendly wolves to other friendly wolves and selecting for different traits and things like that, they became dogs. And the way they created different breeds of dogs, of course nowadays we have different breeds, but the reason we have different breeds is because most breeds are quite old, and around the time most breeds were created, people wanted something to help them hunt. So to get, for example, a hunting dog, people would breed, for example, a dog with a good sniffing nose, with also a fast dog, to get a dog that could sniff out, for example, a pheasant, and also a dog that could also go and catch the pheasant. And that is how of course, probably one of the most famous dogs, the Golden Retriever and the Labrador Retriever, were made, because they were originally hunting dogs to hunt ducks. So, an experiment with silver foxes in Russia. This may sound very off track because they're foxes, but this experiment really shows how these wild wolves became household pets. So there was an experiment in Russia with silver foxes, and they tested a bunch of silver foxes to see which ones were the most friendly ones to humans, and they selected the friendly ones and bred them together. And even after just a few generations, they noticed changes such as a lighter color, or droopier ears, or curly tails. So this is quite interesting because melanin, which is the dark chemical that creates black or dark colors, it's called melanin. So the biochemical pathway to melanin shares a biochemical pathway to aggression. So if they're friendlier, they would naturally have a lighter color. And they also had curly tails and droopy ears, which is a very interesting experiment. Next we have cats, and the funniest thing about cat domestication is that cats sort of domesticated themselves. So cats, 9,500 years ago, is the oldest known pet cat, and it was in Cyprus. So domestic cats descend from African wild cats, and the African wild cats, decided to stay around the human settlements, and they would eat the humans' leftover food, or they would eat the pests that also ate the humans' food. And the people then began to notice that the African wildcats were really good at catching the rats and mice eating their grains. So the people decided to entice and encourage the cats to live in their houses with them, so that they wouldn't have to worry about pests such as rodents or insects eating all their food. And this was another kind of symbiotic relationship, as the cats didn't have to worry about predators and could get easy food, and the people, they could keep their food from all the pests. And domestication then resulted in slightly smaller size and also different colours, such as oranges or whites or greys. And a fossil actually of a cat shows that the cat had wounds on its leg from a fracture or something. So, and it showed that it had healed. So this made scientists think that perhaps the people that owned these cats may have tended to them if they were sick or injured. Just a little wagtail on my window. So, yeah, that's it for cats. Next is goldfish. So, goldfish are much more interesting than lots of people think. So it starts in Imperial China, which, by the way, the history of China is split up into different dynasties and stuff by like the rulers of that time. So Imperial China, which was 266 to 420 AD. At this era, carp were farmed for their flesh in this era, and most of them are grey to silverish brown colour, but some of them had a slight tint of orange or yellow. And then during the Tang dynasty, of course ruled by the Tang people, it was popular to raise these coloured carps in ornamental water gardens or ponds or even in bowls, which at this time they did not realise how bad it was to keep fish in bowls because they did not have the research. But nowadays it is abusive to keep fish in bowls. So they began selectively breeding specifically for this impressive coloration. And of course, if most of these fish were dull grey or silver brown, it was very impressive that some of them had such bright yellows and oranges. So by 1162, breeding goldfish was very popular, and if you're outside of the imperial family, it was strictly prohibited to keep goldfish. So it was only for royals to keep goldfish. Some began to be kept indoors, and this meant that they could have fancier breeds such as long-tail goldfish or Arandas or Ranchu goldfish, which have nice long flowy tails or have large wen on their head. I'll show a picture of what a wen is right here. So in 1603, they spread to Japan by Chinese traders would sell the goldfish to samurais or nobility. And by the 1800s, goldfish were very widespread in Europe, and married men would give their wife a goldfish on their first wedding anniversary. But this kind of died out quickly as goldfish became more of a common pet, as for a while they're a symbol of wealth and status and respect. But of course, they eventually began to become very common and cheap. Just like nowadays, you could get goldfish in most pet shops for quite cheap. So goldfish began being bred for aesthetic purposes, and they're almost exclusively kept indoors. So that's it for the goldfish. And lastly but not least is the hamster, the Syrian hamster specifically, which in the past I've owned a Syrian hamster. His name is Albert, and if you follow me on Instagram, my account is named Amazing Albert Hammy, because I originally made it to put up pictures of Albert, but of course, so The Syrian hamster surprisingly originates from Syria. And it starts when this guy called Professor Aroni, I think is how I pronounce it, went to Syria to catch some hamsters. He found a mother hamster with 11 pups, and he decided to take them with him, and he put them in a box. But since he didn't know the hamster's behavior, since the mother hamster was in stress, mother hamsters actually, when they're stressed, they decide to cull some of their pups. But when Aroni realized this, he was horrified, so he got rid of the mother hamster. And he brought home the remaining 10 pups, and he raised them with his wife. But due to improper cage choice, such as a small size for the cage, and also keeping together solitary animals, this resulted in only 3 being left out of 10, which that's not very good. And he actually got the hamsters because his colleague, who was studying the Chinese hamster, another species of hamster, but he didn't really like the Chinese hamsters because they're very hard to breed and they're difficult to get. So he wanted a new species of hamster to study. So he asked, of course, his friend Aroni to get him some new hamsters. And in 1931, the Syrian hamster went from labs to pet shops. And around 1940 to 1950, the Syrian hamster was a very popular pet in the US and around the world. So that's it about the Syrian hamster. I hope you enjoyed this video and have learned something new. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.